Cool. Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to 2023. I hope it's going to be a little bit better than the last couple of years. Exactly. Always look on the positive side.
Oh God! I'm sorry I said that. I take it back.
Yes, it'll be some waterborne monkeypox you'll get next. But there we go.
Yeah.
Just a quick show of hands. Who was at the first ever LAM? There we go. A few of you. Excellent. Cool. It's coming up on 17 years ago now.
Wow.
And actually, I thought, since there's a little bit of a theme at the moment of talking about the history of kink in the scene, I thought I'd kind of get in at the start of the year and do a little bit of a brief history of LAM. That's fine. Because it's one of those things that we're not always the best at writing down and giving our oral history. So this is the first opportunity to really kind of get a copy of it down. So the launch date was March 2006, and we ran out of a building called the CLAPHAM Ground at Clapham Junction. Anyone been there? Absolutely awesome Art Deco Victorian theatre. Beautiful space. We were in there before they turned the stage into a bar, which in my personal belief ruins the venue, because when you've got a theatre, all of a sudden, once a month when we met, there was always a big stage focus. So as we were building the community, it was important for us to have that connection with people. There was an awful lot of activism work went across those years. The extreme pornography bill, all of the lobbying and vocal stuff about that was literally done with us. And we did one of my favourite stage shows. Just before the law came in, we did one final push and said, hey guys, we're going to do a stage show. We will not be allowed to do this next year. And literally to 3 songs, I cut someone's clothes off. And literally got to the very, very end of it where I'd inadvertently nicked myself with one of the blades, because I'd stashed all of the blades around the stage and in my boots and stuff, and was pulling out, cutting the clothes off. Cut myself. Just as the last note faded out, I scooped the blood off the blade of the knife and went straight down the front. And at that stage, the lights in the house came up and about 6 people ran straight to the toilet. None of them to be ill, but a few of them to get a little bit of privacy. But there we go. So that was our kind of our starting point and our big spiritual home. The crazy thing about the building is that totally impractical for us. Lots of space on the ground floor, but we had little stalls in the royal boxes dotted around. And in fact, I think it was 2007, the first modern PhD thesis on female orgasm. A lot of the initial research was conducted at LAM. Where else are you going to find vocal people who are prepared to engage? And that's actually one of the stories I forgot to mention at the start. LAM as a project actually started in late 2005, where a group of people came to me and said, hey, I'm not allowed to trade in London for various reasons, didn't get on with the other things that were on, would you do something? And I said, I'll tell you what, if 13 of you ring me on Wednesday afternoon between 4:30 and 8:30 and agree with what I'm going to say, then we'll push ahead. And actually the first thing we wanted to do was to make it a community-focused market. So £1 off everyone who came through the front door went into a fund. And in the first year we raised, I think it was about £2,500. And we rotated and went around all the kink-orientated organisations and groups. And then eventually developed this program that we call the LAM Fund, which is basically if anyone has a problem, they need some assistance, come and talk to us. If you've lost your job because you're kinky and you want to retrain as something else, if we can fund that training course, we will do so. Okay? Because at the end of the day, there are lots of places you can go out to for alternative funding if you're straight and vanilla, but actually if you're kink focused, where do you go? Okay? So that was one of the key things that I believe differentiated us from everyone else. Next slide. By 2008, we did our biggest project yet. This is University of London Students' Union. We took over the entire building one weekend, which is basically 3.5 floors, about 27,000 square meters, and we put on a huge kink event. That was the first kink event that had been in there in about a decade, and prior to that, there was an SM Gays event called Dungeon in the Sky.
As a reference, what's the coverage of
Good question. It's approximately half of what we had in there. So it's the Students' Union building. So on the first floor, there's a huge, massive bar, and then there's a venue where they put bands on, and the capacity for that is about 2,500 people on that floor. And then on 2 floors above that, there was another floor with a huge exam room that we set out stalls, and then we had a huge room for doing the workshops. And in fact, I think we had 150 seats and desks in that room for the weekend.
What's the capacity here?
Capacity here is about 1,300.
Wow.
Okay. We can't operate to that level because by the time you put the stalls in, we have to take a number out for health and safety. But yeah, I mean, it was the biggest in terms of square footage event that we've ever pulled off.
That was for Tim, wasn't it?
Yes, that was in conjunction with Skin 2, because there used to be a big expo that happened once a year. There was a bit of a falling out between them, and they said, "Hey, will you guys come in and do one?" So that's when we started doing these specials in addition to the monthlies. Next one. Now, in 2008, the Clapham brand was actually sold to a South African Ents company who decided that they didn't want kink in the building. So they moved us out, and we ended up in the Rise Bar, or Jongleurs. And funnily enough, that was a walkabout for a while.
Did they have a sense of humour?
Not particularly. Not particularly. Although, one of the great parts about it was that obviously the bar staff were just like, what the hell has been booked in here? And so many of them were really fascinated and interested, and oh my God, what are you guys doing? Doesn't that hurt? Isn't that great? We eventually got a volunteer, one of the bar staff, went up in suspension. Yeah. So we always try to engage with the bar staff wherever possible, and you'll find out a bit later why that is a really important part of our story. It was a great little venue. It worked for a while, but unfortunately, it really just wasn't big enough.
Is that the one that has a big dance floor in the centre? We all sat down and sang.
Yes, to some extent. So the upstairs had a big dance floor with the big Jongleurs Comedy Club sign across the back wall, which was always completely surreal because we couldn't cover it. So it was difficult to take wide-angle pictures of the after party because everyone would have known where we were.
Where is that venue? Or was that venue?
That venue was in Lavender Hill, Clapham Junction.
Yeah.
So just up the hill. And in fact, to come out of the Clapham ground, you literally turned right down the hill, up the hill, and in order to make sure that people didn't get lost, we literally had little paw print signs that went all the way up. So someone would go, right, okay, it's 5:30, after party kicks off at 6, and they'd literally go steaming down the high street. Every single lamppost would get one of these attached onto it to give everyone the path of where to go. But yes, that was good fun. Next slide, please. Now, in 2009, we launched the first LAM award ceremony. Because strangely enough, you know, you've got the Oscars, you've got the BAFTAs and all of the rest. No one was doing any kind of meaningful award ceremony for Kinksters. So we decided, I know.
Do you know the weird one is, there's actually somebody here today that was a stall and they've got 2 things. And I said, oh, they awards? No, they're just advertisers. Oh, okay, all right. They look like awards.
So we actually, rather than just a certificate or a little dinky cup or anything, we actually went out and had proper glass plaques made. Now, the funny one was, in those days, we were only able to get 3 of them made per day. because the guy that was engraving them, he was kinky, his boss was not. So he had to do them
On the
3 at a
side.
time while his boss went out for lunch. Okay. So it became about a month and a half long project to get all 30 of these awards done and sorted. But apart from when we took a break during COVID, it's a really important part of what we do, because we want people to be able to show appreciation for the community, give some feedback. Voting will open next month, and there will be all the usual categories from best club, event, best retailer clothing and toys.
I must admit, that's one of the things where I go. I mean, obviously, I do photography here and other clubs, and get into discussion with people about photography. And because I'm actually lucky enough to have won that, I'm like, yes, I'm an award winner. I don't usually go into the detail of what it is, because they won't have a clue what I was talking about. But it's like, I've actually got 4 of these. So you're not dealing with some schmo that hasn't got a clue what to do with their camera. 4? Yes, I've been working with them for a long time now.
Yep. And again, it's top photographer. It's like a limited pool of people. But
it's nice because, sorry, from my point of view, the community, I don't get any, I get in and then I take the photos, and it's the way that the community says thank you for taking the photos.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, it's actually really nice that I get the recognition for it.
Yeah.
And I get the
Exactly. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's one of those. It's always impressed me how much people have been touched and appreciate the awards that they get. There are.
How competitive it gets.
Yes, it does sometimes get very competitive, and a lot of strong arming and block voting, to put it mildly. But you know what? Well, they have to come to the event in order to vote, so who am I to complain at the end of the day? So that's coming up. We're going to start the votes for those next month, and then the award ceremony will be at the start of the after party in March. That's right.
No.
In 2009, the big annual event became the London Fetish Weekend, and basically we became one of the primary partners of that. Either providing shopping, sometimes across 2 days, sometimes we would do one big day of shopping and then a day of workshops and education. The venues that we've played in for these ones, obviously this building is traditionally a little bit too small for it, so we've gone out and we've hired the conferencing suites at,
Serious venues.
at like the National Hotel, the Islet Conference Centre, the Novotel in Hammersmith, because they don't care, it's booking for them. But for us, oh my God, what a great opportunity. We can have a 20-metre long catwalk in the middle of the room, and when we do a fashion show,
We do a fashion show.
everyone is welcome.
Wow.
I don't care if you are, well, as long as you're over 18 and as long as you're capable of walking down the catwalk unassisted, you can be on our stage. And as a result, we've always documented heavily the pictures from that, because it's what I've always thought a fashion show should be, because it's not all emaciated, anemic stick insects walking down the stage. It's people, and therefore they should be young, old,
Oh, there's all sorts.
gender blending, whatever you want to do, because it's an opportunity to express yourself.
And some of the models are taken off the shop floor on the day as well.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen as well.
Literally,
Do you want to do it? And there'll be a shout out if anybody wants to go do some modelling. Go see this stall, they'll fit you out. And the next thing, they're on the catwalk.
and in fact, the very first one we did, we didn't have any models organised in advance. We just set out on the day and said, "Who wants to be in a fashion show?" And then went, "Yeah, you'd look good in her clothes," and it just matched everyone up, and off it went. It was
I've
great
actually
fun.
had red hot batteries from splash guns trying to keep up with it.
Yeah. Next one. Now, in July 2010, we found venues became incredibly difficult to get your hands on, and we moved into a place called Bar 242.
Rich, but rich.
Yeah. It was literally under what is now Southwark Bridge train station.
Oh, wow.
It was a little bar that catered to a couple of the office buildings around it. And interestingly enough, I worked out afterwards a lot of weekend events for footballers and VIPs. So this was the top, and you literally went straight in there, down a level, and there was a single arch there. But where the action really happened was in the office building next door, which the guy also owned, and was having problems getting residents for the business in there. So we basically turned it into some kind of free-for-all party on a Friday, Saturday night for footballers. So we were actually the least scandalous of the people using the venue at that particular stage. But we were in there for a couple of months. The guy that was running the bar was brilliant. The landlady that owned it, not so good. Because unfortunately, one month he went away, she was covering the bar, and I was standing near and overheard her go, fucking hell, this bunch of freaks. And I just thought, such a shame, because they're going to go out and find a new venue this month. And literally, we knew. They were all very, very upset with it, but one of the principles is, if you can't respect us as a community, we will not drink in your establishment, full stop. That was Southwark Bridge. Okay, and next one. But the good news is, we found another home, Union in Vauxhall.
Yeah.
Anyone know this is a club?
Yes.
Yeah. Quite a ropey venue, to put it mildly.
Subversion with it for one.
Subversion were in there for a bit. And there was an entire half floor that no one really ever got to know about. We used it for the first month because it had a series of glory holes. So for the first month, we actually had a volunteer who put herself in the glory hole for the after party. Only the 1 month, however. Primarily because all you could hear was people putting their hands in and going, "Oh my God, piercings!"
Is that the least of your problem?
But there we go. So we were in Union for a while, almost a year, but it was good fun, a good home, and then more importantly than anything, it gives continuity, because throughout this entire period of time, we have not missed a month. Okay, all the way through to this. In fact, the first time we missed anything was 2020. That's right. Now, here is the fun part, because November 2011,
I'm here.
we moved into the Revolution at America Square.
Yep.
Now, the story behind this is we went in to chat with them and they said, you know what, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. So I'm going to do you a deal. I'll put the booking in the diary, but it's up to the new manager. And if she says no, you've got no venue. And we're sitting there going, oh God. So we'll have 2 weeks to find a replacement venue and promote it if this is what's going to happen. Okay. So anyway, new manager comes in on the Monday morning. Sheepishly, the outgoing manager says, got to tell you about this event that's in the diary. It's a little unusual. It's a fetish market. And she immediately poked up and went, yeah, as long as it's run by two blokes called David and Terry, I'm perfectly fine. It's just this, what? Anyway, I walked in and just went, bloody hell, I've not seen you since the Rise Bar when I did that suspension on you. Because she'd gone from being a bar worker, she was now the manager of the bar. So she's comfortable and happy because she knows exactly who we are, what the event is all about, and that's when we moved into America Square. And we ran out of America Square for quite some significant time. Until one afternoon in May after the event, I went in and said, guys, food service wasn't very good on the weekend, toilets were in an absolute shocking state, and I really need a venue that's 50% bigger. And they went, oh, you want to go and have a look at our head office in Leadenhall Street? And I'm like, is it really that much bigger? And they went, yeah, go and have a look at it. And I'm like, can I look at it now? Yeah, wander up, do yourself a favour, come straight into the venue, walk all around the bar, down the staircase, and into the vault. And I'm like, vault? Seems a bit odd. So I tootled down, and lo and behold, there's a load of braying city workers out the front, and I thought, oh God, if it's this kind of bar, I'm really not interested. Got to the staircase and went, this is a little bit interesting. Turned the corner and just went, okie dokie. Walked in here and just went, shit, this is going to cost me a lot of money to hire this every single month, but I don't care. Because this is exactly where I wanted to hold the workshops. Because in that venue, the workshop space was a room about this big. Which was great because
I don't remember going to a workshop in that, to be honest.
a smaller space.
I think I did really quickly.
I mean, I went there, but I don't remember the workshop.
We were able to do some really awesome miniature workshops on things like head fucks and stuff like that. And we did one that I honestly, if I tried to do it again, I think someone would call the police. Because
Oh, come on. Yeah.
Dead. I need like 3 or 4 assistants to pull this one off because it is a real doozy. Have you seen me after talking about it? And in fact, Debs has said, I need to be on standby just in case anyone has it. I mean, it's that close to the knuckle, but we'll see what we do.
The after party at that place, though, was in a very, very strange venue, wasn't it?
Well, sometimes yes and no. So originally the after party we had was at a place called Charlie's Bar that was across the road.
Yeah.
Now the big one everyone will remember was the cyclical staircase that go down.
Tube station here somewhere.
And that place unfortunately got shut down in 2012 when the licensing team were coming around checking to make sure everyone was behaving themselves in venues. And it was originally a pizza restaurant that kind of got morphed into a nightclub. But out the back, there are all these strange little cubby holes with curtains.
Professional?
I wonder why.
Well, there were lots of poles dotted around the club as well.
Violent.
Yeah, other kind of holes, and I don't mean Polish ones either. So licensing came in one afternoon and went for a wander, and were a little bit suspicious when a pair of stiletto heels were pointing out from underneath one of the curtains. And that was it. Shut the venue. Never reopened, which is a shame. But then we were able to move it across into the venue itself for a while. Does anyone remember Erotica?
Yeah.
Yeah, been there. That was our first ever thing.
Yep.
Erotica.
So 2011 Erotica was caught up on the stage, up on the mez around the outside.
Yeah.
There were 2 great big 10-meter marquees. And the reason why we had to perform in marquees is that the council were too worried that we would corrupt those attending Erotica. Okay? Oh yeah.
They know their clientele.
Oh, it gets better. So they're all panicked about this. And I'm sitting there going, and this is all pre-50 Shades, so KINKY was just starting to get onto people's radar. And of course, we had, I think, 100 seats in the workshop, and it was standing room only every time. And we did a session of those, and then a session in the dungeon. When we were doing the dungeon play sessions, the council fire officer came around and went, look, I'm not being funny, you need to lift the sides of that tent up. And we're like, no, you told us they had to be down. He goes, no. The number of people pressing their heads against the little plastic windows trying to look in, it's a danger. And I'm like, okay, let's stop. And we just unhooked the side of it. But yeah, they were.
The sadness is that we must have missed LAM by about 2 years because we went to Erotica and didn't know LAM was there. Hang
There
my
we
head
go.
in shame.
What was it, the last one at Earl's Court you went to? Yeah, we were up on the top.
Like I said, I knew I missed it because I'd since discovered it was there.
Yeah. Next one.
Was it Erotica that had something like Fetish Village?
Yes, they tried to do a fetish village at one stage as well.
Yeah, I remember the phrase distinctly.
And they had one up north as well, didn't they?
No, that was someone
It
different.
was Erotica.
No, that was Sexpo. Yeah.
So that's you.
Erotica moved out of Earl's Court and moved into Tobacco Dock for 1 year, which was just a little bit interesting.
Good old whopping venue.
Absolutely. And about a week beforehand, Savas, that used to run Erotica, rang me and said, look, just a favour, could you put a little bit of an additional crew together? We've got a spare stage because it's an old shopping centre and one of the fountains is boarded out and turned into a stage area. And I'm like, yeah, no problems, as long as I can get all of the models and performers to come in. So we had a crew list that was about 85 long and he was bitching like nobody's business. But at the end of Erotica at Tobacco Dock, 60% of the social media feedback was how amazing the fetish stage was. We even had a suspend-a-thon in the afternoon, and I did 8 different suspensions in an hour, and I was literally non-stop. And the last one I did was someone was dressed as a latex butterfly with latex wings. So we took the wings off, suspended it, and then clipped the wings back on. It was great fun. I can't remember who that is in that, but it is my panda suit because you know what? It's got to be done once in a while. So I have a lot of unusual outfits that pop up at specials and stuff like that.
By the way, there was a wonderful crossover. A lot of the models and performers performed later when the Tattoo Convention took place there.
Yep.
Brilliant venue for that.
And in fact, when the angels that run the tattoo convention were looking around, it was when Savas and I were making up.
Yeah.
So I know them from there, and then it's very small world when you're talking about putting on these big events, because quite frankly, there aren't that many people who are stupid enough to do it. Okay? You want to make a small fortune out of fetish? Start off with a big one. Yep. Because actually, to hire Tobacco Dock for 2 days across the weekend and the day of loading, that's £60,000 gone straight out of your pocket. And then you've got to pay the electricity bill on top of that. So they are very expensive things to play with. Next one. And that brings us into our current home, because in June 2015,
Another seamless move.
we literally departed out of America Square in May, and straight into Leadenhall Hall in June. And the interesting thing is there was another event running in London that lost its venue. So conveniently enough, we suddenly had extra capacity to absorb all of the traders. And that's pretty much what we did. We just went, I tell you what, guys.
There was one event as well where we had the market here and we went back to America Square for the after party because you put a coach on.
Yes. Yeah. So, when we moved in, unfortunately, we had a couple of things in the diary that they had to commit to. So we literally hired a coach and said, you know what, you don't have to walk around the corner, we'll give you a coach for it.
So I can just imagine the driver going,
what? Oh, yeah.
We were all dressed at the time.
And again, with a lot of these things, we don't shy away from it. We stay straight off. Like it's the London Alternative Market with a kinky social event. We want to hire your bus for the weekend, or maybe even a couple of buses.
Yeah.
But there we go. So that brings us through to our present venue and next one. And in 2016, we started a collaboration with O&I. Any of you not been to O&I?
I've been to the venue, not the club.
Okay, I would highly recommend it. About a 27-acre site just outside London. About 7 of it is woodlands, some big open fields, an indoor building with hot tub, sauna, steam room, and lots of playrooms. But what we do is like a summer fete. So we basically take over the site.
Yes.
We do occasionally have a latex knicker turn up.
I'm actually a reverend.
Yeah. And I know, I do actually know both a leather and a latex rabbi as well. There you go. We cover all denominations around there.
I do their photography as well.
And here's the secular Muslim. So the Holy Trinity's right there.
Incidentally, your O on that should have been a little O.
Yes, I know, but that's Terry. You can tell off
I'll
nothing.
tell you.
The
The O is the submissive, the I is the dominant in the name of it.
crazy thing about this is no one had really taken a kink event outdoors before. And yeah, it was fresh air and people were like getting suntanned and all
And
sorts.
there's a pool.
pool as well. So yeah, it just created this very different feeling vibe. People would turn up with a picnic blanket and a picnic and just really just chill out and purr for the entire day. So that
Can I
was
just
the goings
interrupt
on there.
that? If you come this year, please do not bring food.
Yeah.
The rules since
Yeah.
COVID have changed. Food is not allowed to be brought in.
Then in 2018, I had this really bright idea.
Oh God!
We were going to have a weekend retreat. Okay. Now, one of my other jobs takes me into hotels on a regular basis, and this is a hotel that I had said, I like your hotel. It's only 48 rooms. Can I hire the whole thing for the weekend? No, 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 no. And then a couple of years later, when the UK internal market for vacationing was at its lowest point, it suddenly became a yes. So we picked the weekend of the winter equinox. So it was no March.
Was it not?
Spring
Yeah.
solstice.
Spring solstice.
Spring
equinox.
Spring
Oh,
equinox.
you're right. Sorry.
Spring, which was an interesting time because we're in the middle of the New Forest. So the whole site is just trees all the way around it, really nice and green and lush. And on the Friday, everyone's going, what about the snow? And I'm like, really seriously, if you think it's going to fucking snow on one of my events,
Go for it.
all I'm going to say is I need a volunteer for snow bondage. And then on the Saturday, when it started to snow, I checked again, are you still up for snow bondage on Sunday?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
We had snow fairies. There was one where they got dragged up the side.
4 inches of snow overnight.
Yep.
Okay. The best part is just out the shop here we had 2 hot tubs.
Oh yeah.
So people were able to have that moment of sitting in the hot tub with the snow falling down.
And
Absolutely.
you know, I'm
magical.
still annoyed. There was one character who I shan't name who was in the hot tub, and for their own reasons, they didn't want a photo in the hot tub with it snowing. By the time they came round to the idea it had stopped snowing, I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh.
So that started the retreat format of events. And yeah, it was
That was about 4,500 photos that weekend, at least. And that was just me.
Yeah. Now, the marquee we were able to use for the Friday night because we had a burlesque performer in there. But after that, it was so cold we couldn't keep the room warm enough to play. So we moved the dungeon inside, but we still had an absolutely cracking weekend.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I know.
It's the UK.
I was in Indonesia.
It's the UK. We don't have a climate. We just have weather.
Yes, I know.
So in June, I delivered upon a long-term promise of a friend of mine who passed away a couple of years before. He said, oh my God, what we're really missing up north is something like that. So we started an event called Manchester, and that was in the Revolution Bar in Deansgate, which is basically 2 double-sized railway arches. Absolutely great, really good laugh. And then unfortunately, as we get to the next slide, that happened. So I'm sure you can imagine that was a very difficult time, not only for us, but for our traders and everyone else. And we really didn't know what was going to happen. So our response to that was obviously, no one's done it before, so let's live stream kink events. And literally that's what we did. Every single Sunday for about 58.
How many of those did you actually
58. Yeah, including one on Christmas Day. And it just the whole idea behind it was we're all in exactly the same shoes. We're not getting to talk about kink. We're not getting to express ourselves. Let's create some space where people can at least come together. So when it was on, there was a Jitsi or Zoom chat that would go alongside it, gave people an opportunity to chat. Some of them were, I think the shortest was about 3 hours. The longest I did was 8 hours live streaming on Sunday. Okay. Blooming knackering because I'd never done live streaming before this.
Also, we all learn new skills because I learned how to do slideshows. I've never done that before, and you learned how to do all this lot.
Yeah. And quite literally, if anyone needs to learn skills of live streaming, I'll cut all of the crap out for you and show you the easy way of doing it. Because across this period of time, the technology was also developing and expanding. So we were in at the right time. And
He thought I had to do it in 15 minutes.
yeah, the new system, like 15 minutes, it's that simple. It's a little bit harder when you need to set it up, but outside of that,
The important thing I was going to say, I'm moved to this last point, is a lot of people who would have been running weren't running.
yes,
So,
yeah. And equally, there were an awful lot of traders who would have gone bust. And yet it was just enough. And interesting enough, during the early part of 2020, the US economy became, the US currency became so powerful that buying toys in the UK was incredibly cheap for them. So we started doing things where it was like the far-flung Kink Award, buy something from a LAM trader, whoever is the furthest will get a prize. So literally there were people in Australia buying safety shares because there was a chance that they were going to get more money back as a result of making that simple purchase. But yeah, that kind of got us out and spread the word around the world. But it also helped establish the healthy mental practices stuff, because we've been doing that in this venue since must have been about 2016. But then we realised actually we need to have a healthy mental practices section as part of the LAM live format, and then that eventually span out to the ones that are currently running every other Thursday. So yeah,
I think also this ended up with a much greater social media general,
Yeah.
because people were phones, laptops, social media, Facebook, this, that, and the other websites, and it became that everything was on all of the different social media. So it wasn't just on FetLife, it wasn't just on Facebook, it was all over the show, which gave a greater coverage for information and knowledge to spread out.
and equally, you know what? Anyone discover that they were kinky during lockdown?
Oh, I did.
No, you made it feel-
On the own.
You were not unique in doing that. Okay, so many people were like, "Oh my God, the world could end," and I never got to explore that one thing. So at the same time as everything is shut down, so many people coming out of the woodwork going, "I need to learn. I need to take
The
stuff
number of
on."
people who picked up rope during lockdown.
Was absolutely crazy.
I took a few lessons during the lockdown.
Yeah, because it just kept things going, kept things alive.
And I think also LAM was the only club that kept it going over lockdown.
Hey,
Well, there were those that got some rather large bungs in the back pocket from the Arts Council when we were told to fuck off by the Arts Council. So as far as I'm concerned, the next time the Arts Council asks me to sponsor one of their touring performers, the answer will be straight up. But there we go. Particularly since, you know what, 100 grand that they gave one kink organisation, yeah, spreading that a little bit more thinly would have been really nice and appreciated. But there we go. It's one of those, it's not necessarily who knows you, it's who you rock up with. But there we go. When things were really damn dire, but were starting to open up again, we couldn't get hold of the venue because all the pubs, nightclubs and everything was shut. So what we did was I had a chat with a friend of mine who happens to have a farm down near Brighton and a couple of barns. So we turned one of the barns into a one-way shopping market, and the other one, which didn't have walls, into a bar and barbecue, which was absolutely awesome. Right up until the point where the Rozzers turned up.
If you
Because
chased them up the
it was about 2 weekends after that big rave that got busted down on the south coast, and some nasty little cockwomble decided to call the police and claim that we were having a fetish rave. So
sounds like a genius. Excellent.
they all turned up in a big snatch wagon, got onto site, realised that it was a load of old crap.
he's run after them.
They're turning around to try and get off, and I'm like, "No, I'm talking to you." So that's it. I'm going up the hill. Going, "You come here." What the hell are you playing at?
Of you running up there.
Yeah. Because I figured if I didn't confront the police, they might come back later. Whereas if they get a mouthful off me and said, look, I spoke to your licensing officer, I explained why it's inappropriate.
This
for you
is
to come
no
on
pageant
here."
number.
Yeah. And yeah, it was interesting to put it mildly, but we did a couple of markets down there because again,
It's 3 or 4.
it was a great opportunity to be outdoors. As soon as we were allowed to actually book performers and stuff, and in fact, the Leather Comic did the first performance post-COVID in the field.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, the sheep were all joining in and literally laughing with the jokes. It was like heckled by a four-legged. Yeah. Oh, whenever we get performers and stuff, we always book them because you know what? We were missing the enjoyment.
This is dirty burger time.
This is best. Oh, yeah,
Dirty
absolutely.
Then in August of 2020, we got hold of our friends up at the VA for their alternative in Tempestford.
Brilliant.
We had a number of summer fates there as well. Again, well,
Probably like that.
we had a few minutes of rain. It was like
Yeah, but
10.
it chopped it down.
Yeah, but it was only 10. Okay. Generally speaking, we always have fantastic
We do.
weather on the LAM event. Even when we've had outdoor markets in March and April, okay, we still did not get rained on for those ones. But
I remember stupidly turning out my leathers.
I know you got rather warm, didn't you?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh,
dirty.
one of the ones down on the farm, we had a crew member who literally was treated a couple of days
Yeah,
later
for being up the top.
for being up on the top of the sunstroke. I mean, literally, it was
There was
just
no protection.
scorching.
There was the barn, and there was a cover next door to it. But other than that, the whole venue was open to the world. So
Very hot.
no protection at all.
Very hot.
Then on December 2020, when it was really damn grim and everything was really locking down, we had a Christmas market. Now, this was so heavily restricted, we were not allowed to have a bar. We were not allowed to even serve teas and coffees, and we weren't allowed to have the guests use the toilet at the venue.
But
Okay,
you had to do it in.
and it had to be, you had to go round
One-way system.
in a one-way system.
Yeah, but it was restricted. It was like on a 3-hourly block, wasn't it? So the
So
first
you
lot would go in, and then they would chuck
Yeah.
out, and the next lot came in, and then they would chuck out.
But it was the only way it was going to happen, and it was literally the choice that year was I could have a Christmas dinner, or the stalls could. So we decided to let the stalls have a nice bumper Christmas.
They also had some good masks at that store.
Yep.
British masks.
Next one. One of the next ones we did after that, when we started getting a little bit more established back in London, Blue Studios up in North London, which is a really crazy music rehearsal site. And
Oh,
basically they let us get in there. Again, had to hire portaloos because in those days you weren't allowed to use other people's toilets indoors. So it was the only way to get around and have it fully functional. But again, the key thing here was if we're not here and supporting the community, then traders would have gone bust and people would have had nowhere to go. If you're cross-dressing and this is your only opportunity to come out and do that, 2020 was a bloody bleak year. So an awful lot of people lost that ability to express themselves, and that's why it was really massively important to keep it going.
You did LAM live from in that venue as well.
Yeah.
Because I remember coming up for photos and having to tiptoe up and down the stairs and then tiptoe back down again.
I mean, literally just this whole crazy idea. And we've done some of the outdoor events, we live streamed the workshops and stuff like that as best as we could, but we don't have the BBC and ITV's outside broadcasting trucks and budgets. So quite often, a lot of this is, can someone please dip the string in a little bit more water and tension it off between the bean cans? But we generally will get there because as much as anything, you know what, we like to provide the content online, but it's much more important for the people who are present and in the room.
I can actually still remember those stickers on the floor as well.
Yeah. And then final one, and that kind of brings us back round to August of 2021, where we returned to the venue here. Now the funny thing is, they didn't have enough staff to fully open the venue. So we could either have a bar open in the evening and no bar during the day, or a bar during the day and none in the evening. So we plumped for the evening, and that got us up and running, because I mean it was just getting to that desperation point. Everyone wanted to do stuff, but venues just weren't ready to be rolling at our kind of speed.
But we were allowed to bring our own food in, weren't we? So
Yeah, we were allowed delivery
bring our
and stuff
pizza
like
in
that.
or whatever from outside, and they were actually really good because they allowed us to use their knives and forks and condiments that they couldn't provide anyone to do the food.
And after a couple of months, we managed to get food and bar service up and running throughout the whole day. But it was always the challenge. And literally, a couple of the newsletters said, "Hey, if anyone's unemployed at the moment and is looking for work, they'll pay you £22 an hour to work behind the bar upstairs." And it literally was, they were just desperate for anyone with a pulse who wouldn't mind working.
The other challenge in that time was, of course, the COVID tests.
I remember bringing up COVID test religiously and never asked me twice.
99% of people did, believe me.
Yeah.
That was the hard work bit.
Yes, and the ones that didn't, I mean, God, just across that period of time, you'd honestly think that sticking cotton bud up your nose or the back of your throat and doing a swab, I was asking for people to donate a kidney.
More than that, more than a kidney, crikey.
How dare you do this? This is absolutely disgraceful. I'm not forcing you to come to the event. Just cool your jets. I appreciate that not everyone is going to have the same stance, but actually at this particular occasion, we have a stallholder who's pregnant. So they set the rules and terms, because that's the most vulnerable person we have in the room, and we will do everything we can to protect that one person. And if that means that I don't want to stick that up my nose, don't come for 6 months, then you don't come for 6 months. Very sorry, your choice.
Weirdly, I attended as many events that were going on this whole time, and I can safely say I've never caught COVID here. I've had it 3 times, and 2 times was at another club, but never here.
Yeah.
So it was worth it.
Yeah. And I'm sure some people did.
More
Well,
than likely,
It wasn't
you
as
can
if
only do so much.
we were, some of the clubs that started up really early were just like, yeah, sorry everyone, 30 people have reported they've got COVID within 3 days of the event, and we're like, yep. We didn't want to have to face any of that, because it was a stressful enough time anyway. To throw all of that on top would have just been, well, as a friend of mine would say, it's just not worth the candle, because the stress of going through that was just, yes.
I mean, weirdly, that still rumbles on in the undertones. But, I mean, the population that comes in doesn't realise that the crew still rumbles on underneath. And is everybody safe? Is everybody clean? Is everybody done tests? Is anybody showing signs of anything? So they still look out for each other and you guys.
And I'm sure there is still some sad sack sitting in a lonely corner somewhere claiming he's never going to come back to LAM ever again because we did COVID tests.
I just find it interesting.
Smaller.
I mean, to me, I went to LAM then, gone somewhere else, Lectureworks, and you both were better. I went to other clubs as well, and I used to leave because you really guys nailed it. I mean, I'm new to LAM, and I think you nailed it when it came to the test.
I mean, to us, because my background, I'm a molecular biologist, so actually I have already sequenced the viral genome. I'm very familiar with the risks and all the rest. So great, and I'm like, yeah, ultra cautious. This is the line that we will take, and we are going to.
Remember the woman that I was staying there who just got off the plane, American woman from Thailand, and you said, "Well, I think you might need to do a COVID test." I remember you talking to her. She's going, "Oh, it's fine." And I'm standing there with a cigarette, and you're like, "It's just people's, just do it. It's easy."
Yeah.
I have to say that because of your background, it was so much easier. Because if somebody gave us a hard time, it was like, I'll tell you what, go and talk to Mr. Cosmic. He'll explain it to you in words of one syllable, clearly and precisely. He knows what he's talking about. And if you don't like it, the door's that way. And I know that if they didn't do it, they got shown the door. But because you knew what you were talking about, it's like, if you're going to argue, go and argue with him.
And it's great fun wearing a kinky COVID mask, leather mask with studs on it. I can't find it, I've lost it. I wear it all the time then.
Yeah. I mean, even that, I mean, if you think about it, 2020 comes around, Jed, who's a tailor, can't get within 2 meters of your customers to measure them up. What the hell goes on? So after a couple of months of it being really grim for her, I said, Jed, make me a mask. I'm not making masks. And I'm like, no, Jed.
Like the kinky
I want
mask.
a Jed Phoenix mask. I want a 2-inch spike on the front. I want to indicate that I'm really serious about social distancing. I want the kind of thing that when I put it on, everyone goes, whoop, and steps back away from me.
Right.
Yeah. And lo and behold,
I lost a few of those spikes playing the electric work. That's in the story.
it was a cracking way of doing it.
Yeah.
I think she sold 135 masks in the first couple of months, which was enough to kind of get her through the hardest part of it. So there we go. So that kind of brings us round to where we are today at the start of 2023. We have every intention on remaining in this venue as long as
So
possible.
the retreat that had the snow on, how many years was that? That was until
It was alternate periods.
Right, okay. So we had a retreat in 2000 and where are we? 18. Yeah. So that was it, right. So there was the March 2018 retreat. Then they didn't give us a second booking at the hotel. I found an alternative venue near Southampton, which didn't go ahead because about 4 weeks before I got raided for human trafficking. And I
What?
and that's, he just loves dropping that on.
Technically,
Right, so we
the
talk
full
about
description of
this
this one is human trafficking for the purposes of sexual exploitation and taking and selling pictures of the victim online.
Very specific.
Very specific.
Do you want this recorded or want it stopped now?
No, I'm happy because I've finished with the next and I've finished with the IOPC and I've gone through to the mayor's office on this particular one. Because strangely enough, you know, if you've been through my pictures on FetLife and seen the one of the lady in the wheelchair suspended, she's the one that claimed I human trafficked her.
Oh. And then she turned up, no, her dom turned up at an Oh, mate.
At an event.
I've never been so protective over someone in my
Stores
life.
here, they were selling chocolates.
Yeah.
American.
Yeah, that's her. Yeah. So, whatever happened in their relationship for her to throw me under the bus, it was not appreciated. As a result of that, I cancelled one retreat because I'm like, you know what, I'm just not in the headspace to deal with all of this. It was a 2018, that one. And then we did another retreat was booked in for March 2020. And then COVID came along and we had to push that back and we eventually did it in November 2021.
Yeah. That was with the horses.
Which, interestingly enough, was at exactly the same hotel as we did the first one, but under different management. So the guy, and you'll find him if you're a fan of the Hotel Inspector, if you look at one of the episodes that's filmed in the New Forest, that was the guy that used to run the hotel. He's a builder and a bit of a character. So he sold the business on to someone else, and I rang up and said, "Hey, do you want to take this booking?" Oh, no, we're a profitable hotel, we don't need that kind of shenanigans. And then I rang him up about 12 months later and said, "Okay, you've had a year now. If you're looking for the £17,000 that's missing in your turnover, we can have a conversation about it." And he's like, "Yeah, let's do that, please." So we got booked back in on that one, and again sold out the whole hotel. Additional hot tubs this time. Was it 4 we had down the back? Yeah, 4 hot tubs. No marquee this time because, you know what, it wasn't necessary. But yeah, a lot of good fun. We obviously were going to do another one late last year, but economic conditions and a couple of other things, it didn't happen. I'm not going to do another retreat, but what I'm negotiating on at the moment is 2 small mini weekend festivals. So somewhere in the summer, we're hoping to do a market on the Saturday, party in the venue on the Saturday night, and then a workshop day on the Sunday. And then later in the year, we're also looking at another weekend type format where there'll be camping options and all bits and pieces as well. So we still want to get everyone together and have that kind of shared experience, but I personally can't risk a £12,000 loss by booking another hotel. Simple as that. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Some of the future plans of what's going on. I've said I will bring Manchester back at some stage in the future, but only when London is completely destabilised and we've repaid the debts that we've incurred in the last 3 years. And it's about 28,000 has had to be put into the businesses to keep them going and afloat and all the rest. And it's one of those. It almost would have been cheaper to try and shut it and sell off all of the assets. But the problem is, we've got 65 pieces of dungeon furniture that have been made by people over 17 years. The cost of replacing all of that kit alone would have just bankrupted us straight away. So it's one of those, it's a toughie, but we did survive it. We've got a little bit of a way to go before we pay it all back, but it's given us some great resources. So if anyone wants to hire any dungeon furniture, give us a shout, because we literally have vans full of the damn stuff. And quite often someone, what? No, we've got a spanking bench that you can have for a month or two, that's not a problem. There's a reasonable rate for it. Or if you've got a club and you want a full turnkey solution, someone will turn up, build you a dungeon, stay till 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and take the whole thing apart for you again. But I have run through on my timings. I hope you've all had a good day at LAM. If you're not,